Greetings, citations. My name is Dave Duford, and if you're watching this, it's because you are interested in selling final expense or already selling final expense and probably are wondering what are the best and worst final expense carriers and products to use. And what we're going to be talking about today is exactly that. I'm going to give you what I feel are the best products to use, what makes them the best, and also tell you about some drawbacks. And then at the end of this video, make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to actually give you some insight based off of really the last year and a half of conducting and running the free lead dig agency program. And what I've learned about one particular product that we are, as much as possible, not selling, and arguably y'all shouldn't be selling at all whatsoever. So make sure you stick around for that, because that's going to be incredibly valuable. So with that said, I've got my notes up here. We're going to jump in. And again, this training is perfect if you are getting started in the final expense, you're thinking about selling final expense, or you already are selling final expense and you're just looking for some good carriers to work with and carriers not to work with. Okay. All right. Perfect. So we're going to start this, and I'm going to give you them in kind of sequential order from my least favorite carrier to my most favorite carrier. They're all my favorite carriers, the five I'm going to give you, but the ones that we're going to start with are not at the top of our list, but they're in the favorite list. Does that make sense? So that means you have to wait to get the better carrier. So or at least what we think. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've got my little spreadsheet here. So the first carrier that we feel is one of our favorite is a company called Sika. You may also see them as Citizens Life. So they're a company out of Dallas, Texas, I believe. They've recently got into the final expense market, and they're doing a lot of things that I consider are good, and they're doing things the right way. And let's talk about those things that I feel like are good things about their product. So first of all is flexible underwriting. There's a lot of conditions that you can get through Sika that you're not going to be able to get through with other options that are out there. So that's a good thing, especially in the final expense market where the underwriting the client's difficult. I mean, our clients are old, their health isn't the best. And so you need a carrier that has some ease of which to get approved for. Now, another thing that I like about them is their application process is pretty easy. So everything that we do on with Sika is predominantly telesales. So the cool thing about Sika is beyond completing the e-app, we just have to upload a verbal recording of the sales presentation so that is on hand with Sika. So it's much better than using some of these applications that require some sort of DocuSign process, which is just a nightmare, or some entirely third-party underwritten process that's outsourced to the Philippines where people don't quite understand English the same way, and it off-puts your clients. So there's some good things about the application process that makes it easier. And especially since most of you guys and gals are selling over the phone, you're going to find that the app process with Sika is pretty simple. Now, some things that I don't like. Let's talk about those, because we have to have some level of objectivity here, because there's no such thing, by the way, I will mention this too. There's no such thing as a perfect carrier. Like what you'll find is if you're thinking about selling final expense or new, like no carrier does everything that you want. They're going to do sort of several things that you like really well, but then there's usually one or two things that you don't like about them, and you just have to kind of compromise. And that's kind of why what we do, at least at the dig agencies, have options for carriers in order to fill in those holes that one carrier has but another doesn't. Does that make sense? So versus using one carrier isn't always necessarily the best choice, because it's not going to be the best choice. It just can't be by default for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Okay. So reasons I don't like them or stuff I don't like, I should say. Okay. So first of all, what Sika does on its payments is a little less than the norm. And they do a 50% advance on the first draft. So what does this mean? So this means when you're using Sika and you write a piece of business, instead of getting the typical 75% of the commission up front and paid to you, and usually within a couple of days after the policy, this is what you find with most of the carriers we'll talk about later. With Sika, you only get 50%, not 75%. So you get less money up front. And then that advance typically doesn't happen until the first payment is made. So if you're in a free lead program, this is more of an issue. If you're running a free lead program, it's tougher on cash flow. But even as an agent buying leads, if you're only getting half of the advance and you're fronting the money on buying leads, Sika ends up being a little tighter on the cash flow concerns. And cash flow is king, guys, if you're running your own business, buying leads, or if you're running an agency. So despite it being a great app, the speed at which you get pay, it's slow pay. And we don't like that. Not a fan of that. Again, we can deal with it, but it's something that is something worth considering. There's also, this is something I'm not a big fan of. There's a 3-month full chargeback provision. So let me explain this to you. This is something I am seeing more commonly now with a lot of final expense carriers, is that if a lapse occurs within X amount of months, then instead of getting the chargeback prorated, you have to pay the full chargeback back. So in other words, if Mildred paid 2 months of the premiums and you were advanced, trying to think of a number, 500, and that's half the commission. So you would have to pay back. With typical carriers, you wouldn't pay back. You'd only pay back the 500 minus the 2 payments because you earned those 2 payments our client Mildred paid for, right? So it's prorated. The chargeback is prorated to how many premiums actually collected. With Sika, they charge back the whole balance. So that means you're potentially on the hook for up to 2 or 3 payments of a full chargeback back to you. So what this invariably does is it lowers your profitability, and it unfortunately clouds the distinction of how much you're making. It ends up being less because you don't keep a prorated portion of those earnings. So there's one carrier that has not made the list that we cut out, that they have a 4-month provision on chargebacks. And to me, it's just asinine. I think if you kept the client on for a number of months, you should have been paid for that. But again, this is something that's becoming familiar, unfortunately, and I'm not a big fan of it. And so you need to be aware of this. Now, the last thing I don't like about Sika is that they don't have no Social Security billing yet. So what is Social Security billing? Social Security billing is when we time the premium payments to the exact day that your client receives his or her Social Security or disability check. You have to understand what makes final expense unique is you're dealing with low-income people, and they have a propensity of forgetting about making their payments or blowing it on other things if there's a delay between when they get their money and when you take the money. So you want to use carriers that have Social Security deposit billing, because we time the premium withdrawal on the exact date that they get that money from Uncle Sam. And that day may change. If it's a weekend, they normally would get their money on the 3rd, and the 3rd is a Sunday. They're going to get paid on the 1st. But if you don't have Social Security deposit billing, you'd have to take it out after the 3rd, which would be the 4th. So as I used to say all the time, our clients have the full weekend to blow their money on smokes and booze. By the time Monday rolls around, they're broke and you've got a missed payment. Okay. So Social Security deposit billing is big, especially huge in my free lead program, because man, if you can have a product that, collects predictably, it improves persistency, the quality of business. And I mean, even for the agent, that just means more commission retained, so it's a pretty big deal. So in short, we like Sika. They have a place when the underwriting is squirrely. But for us, for how we run business, it is not a core carrier. We do not want agents using this as, like the primary carrier they did. We did for a while. And what we ran into is a lot of cash flow problems, handling lead costs, et cetera. So, but again, other issues with it too, just from the agent standpoint. Okay. So continuing on here, the next one we like, which would come in at like number 4, is Mutual of Omaha. All right. So Mutual of Omaha, we really like this carrier because it has a few niches in the final expense market that compared to some of these other carriers we're going to talk about, really fit well. So I want to talk about these two, but they've got some drawbacks too. Okay. So the first reason is that they have great prices. And I'm just going to throw down the second reason and talk about them too. And of course, everybody here is older than 60, remembers Wild Kingdom, right? I don't even know what this is about. I'm 40, but I'm sure there's a few of you that grew up in the golden years and remember this show called Wild Kingdom. And I cannot spell and talk at the same time, recognition. But apparently all of our clients, like, they immediately remember Mutual of Omaha from this popular show in the 60s and 70s, I think. Jack Hanna, I think, was the host, and some Wild Kingdom. Yeah. So there's a brand name recognition that comes from Mutual of Omaha that helps bridge the gap between for any trust issues that exist. So a lot of agents like using it because it's immediately, as you say it, people recognize the company and the branding and feel that much more comfortable about how Mutual of Omaha works and buying a policy from them. The other benefit to Mutual of Omaha is the prices are great. If you run prices and compare them to many of the other products here, they typically are one of the most competitively priced. And to a certain extent, price competition does help persistency, meaning the amount of business that stays on the books. So we like Moo for these specific reasons where, if there's a trust issue, and we need to leverage a brand name product the client probably recognizes, they're great for that. Or if the client has an existing policy and the only way to replace it is by going to a low price competitor, Mutual of Omaha is really good for that. Now, reasons we don't like it include the following. So no Social Security billing, and not application friendly. There we go. Marlon. That's right. I see that over in the corner, Ed. Thank you. So what was the rest of his name here? Marlon Perkins. That's right. All right. All right. See, he remembers. I bet Ed's older than 60, right? All right. Let's go back to the screen here. Sorry. All right. Good. Okay. So here, let me expand on this. So again, hopefully I've made it clear why Social Security deposit billing is so important. Mutual of Omaha doesn't have it. So that's going to affect persistency. Despite its competitive rates, its billing timing isn't set up for Social Security deposit billing. And it's not application friendly. This has always been my gripe with Mutual of Omaha, is that you have to do an electronic application and send it to the client's email. Well, there's a certain percentage of your clients over 60 that while they have access to email and an email, they just cannot figure out how to find the email and figure out where the button is to click it to start the application. Okay. And if you think I'm kind of silly in saying this, try me. You will find when you are sitting across the virtual table with a client ready to spend a lot of money and you're going to get a great commission, but Mildred just can't figure out how to start the app or finish it. And then the app's done and gone. It's very demoralizing. So we only want to use Mutual of Omaha when the client is like, they get it. And you'll have to develop a sense of this. Where do you trust them through this process or not? The general advice is to use carriers that do text assign, where you text them a code, or they get a text the code or something like that, and then they enter it on their phone to act as a signature. That's easy to do. All of our clients can do that. Or a verbal authorization process that works well too. The least effective way is any process where the client must independently complete the application through what I would call a DocuSign process. Not good. You will lose clients. Another company that was like this that we used to use is AIG for their guaranteed issue product. Just a clunky process, very frustrating. Lose clients left and right just because Mildred can't find the button in the email. Okay, so that's Moo. Let's go ahead and turn the page, and we're going to take a look now at our top three. And these are the ones that we try to write the most of. So the first on the list here is Trinity. They're also known as Family Benefit in certain cases. I really like this carrier. I wrote them as an agent back in 2014 2015, and their product has remained pretty much the same. There's been some few changes. Diabetic neuropathy is not first day full coverage anymore, but other than that, the things that make Trinity Family Benefit really special are still there, and they have been for really the last 10 years. So let's talk about that. So number one, Trinity, I like about them are very competitive prices. Next on the list here is they do have Social Security billing. That's huge. And then last on the list here is decent underwriting processes. So we'll break all this down a little bit further. So Trinity really was designed with the final expense agent in mind. They were designed to be a competitive product that, as long as a moderately healthy person could qualify, the prices were going to be some of the best. And they also understood the realities of the final expense market. Chief amongst them is that you have to have a process to approve the client that the client can actually complete. And you have to have billing that predictably collects the money before the client goes to the ATM and withdraws it. So the Social Security deposit billing they do have, that makes them very, very good. Our persistency with them typically is over 90%. So of the business that makes it to the first premium, 90% of those stay on the books for the first year, which is incredibly powerful. Okay. And the underwriting is not too bad. It's like a 2-year look back in most conditions. They're not going to be the niche carrier you put COPD with, or some of these less than fatal diseases that are kind of like chronic long-term diseases, like think diabetic neuropathy, or possibly COPD, like I said, or multiple sclerosis. You won't get first day full coverage with those. But if the client's been more than 2 years cancer and heart attack and heart issues free, and they otherwise don't have any other major issues, you'll get first day full coverage with them. So I like them a lot. But let's talk about some things I don't like, because again, not every carrier is perfect. So the big things I don't like are, one, the application process. This is a big issue. And then number two is lower comp, lower commission. Okay, so let's explain this. So what Trinity and Family Benefit does right is they do have an application process specifically for that is friendly to a senior population that is not technology intelligent. It is a call-in verbal application process. What makes this process sometimes difficult to deal with is that in its current form, this may change in the future, Trinity outsources its calling to the Philippines, as far as I can tell. And most businesses conducted over the phone now between the agent and the client over the phone. And there is inherently a sense of mistrust. I don't want to say mistrust, but the potential for mistrust. They don't see you. Seeing is believing for a lot of people. And they don't want to be scammed. They've been told, don't pick up the phone, it's a scam. So you got to overcome this kind of general disposition. And what has happened at times, or an otherwise clean deal, is parred up and ready to rock on Trinity. We deal with a person in the Philippines who they speak English, but they don't do it in a way that is intelligible to the client. And they feel like the idea of with somebody such a thick accent, and it's no judgment on me of them at all, but it is off-putting to the client. And some people just give up on it because they feel like, oh, this is one of those scams. Listen, it's not an American, right? So I've talked to the VP about this. I think interviews are great, but you really have to insource it and use Americans, at least people with better accents, because otherwise we lose otherwise really good clients. And agents will start to shy away from writing products like this if they can't reliably depend on getting the business approved, right? You can have a great product, in other words, but man, if like it's a coin toss on whether or not the person on the other end of the line doing interviews is going to botch the deal, like, do you really want to take that risk? And what a lot of our agents realize is, as much as I like the product and I've used it forever, like they don't like doing it. And so I think it's probably the only issue with the company that is like major. It's an otherwise great product. So I would only recommend using it when you've got to get the lowest price, when you've got to get, it's the only way you can make the deal happen. The other downside of it, it's not a major issue. Compensation typically is a little bit lower than what you'll find with other carriers, but not too much so that I would say, I'm not writing it because I'm just getting, way less than I would elsewhere. But the interview part of it is really the major issue. Okay. All right. So back to the list here, down to the last two carriers before we get into the type of business I'm done writing. So the last two, first one is American Home Life. So let me talk to you about how they work and what I like about them. So first of all, American Home Life, what I like is they do have Social Security deposit billing. The application process is easy. And if you need help, underwriting communication is great. So what I mean by that is, again, you're kind of starting to see some parallels between what the good companies do that separate them from the not so good companies. Billing, as you can see, is a common thing that we require for our upper echelon carriers. American Home Life does that. The application process for the agent and invariably the client is easy to do. So specifically with their GuideStar product, American Home Life has the Patriot product and the GuideStar. We use the GuideStar. GuideStar product, you can call in, takes about 5 to 10 minutes, closer to 10 minutes to do the application to complete the underwriting assessment. But they actually have their interviewers in the States. And if there's any like squirreliness with their underwriting, the interviewers will ask more questions on the spot to qualify the client to make sure that they're a good fit. You can also do a text assign, but if something's off about the underwriting, you might have to call in anyway. So a lot of what our agents do is just make the phone call, get the underwriting situated so as to reduce the length of the application and to get to a decision faster. And that's the other thing that's great. Like what you'll find with a lot of these companies, it's very hard to actually talk to somebody about a case, why it's been rated a certain way, or having an appeals process. American Home Life has that. The underwriters will work with you and try to help you to get a case issued. So it's not like you're not in a position to talk to somebody that can help. So it is very useful in that regard. All right. So the next thing on here is what I don't like about them. There's only really one thing, and it's the higher prices. So they do run a little bit higher in premium than what you'll see with other companies out there. But I mean, it's not so bad that it's going to be just like replacement heaven, like a lot of these captive companies out there that work for one product only. They're for me, it's funny. I've kind of, this is a big takeaway, and we'll kind of get to this in a second. The ability to have an easy application process with predictable underwriting and predictable premium collection is way more important than pricing. And I used to be the inverse of that. Like I wanted to get the product that had the best pricing, but if everything else is bad about it and you only issue it half of the time, what good is it? And we'll get into that a little bit more. It's incredibly important because again, a lot of the products are just trash. When you take the full picture into a scope, and a lot of agents lose a lot of money unnecessarily because they value things which we think are important, like pricing, way more than the ease of getting a policy predictably issued. Okay. So the final product here on the list that we really like to use, it is the flagship product here at the DIG agency, is American Amicable, and a company out of Waco, Texas. I started off with them in 2011. I've used them off and on through the years, but now they're definitely our primary carrier at the DIG agency behind, in front of American Home Life. American Home Life second. So what do I like about them? Well, guess what? They bill correctly. They do Social Security deposit billing. They get that money in a quick and efficient fashion. They advance on issue, meaning you get paid typically the next day after the policy is approved. and you get it at 75% advance. So from a cash flow standpoint, if you're buying leads and you need money to cover your cost, this is a way faster process than getting paid. Also, it's completely telesales friendly. Most of you guys and gals out there are doing telesales. You're selling over the phone. Their application process is super duper easy. Text assign process, very good. Everybody loves it. Helpful staff, they will help you if you get a case that you're not sure of why it got issued the way it did. Then you can get your policy sent up to underwriting for a review to try to get it reversed and to get some guidance as to why it was set up the way it was. And the last reason is I have a funeral concierge program, which, you know, other companies like Lincoln Heritage Senior Life have this, where it's this extra add-on that the premise behind it is to shop funeral homes to get a lower price to help save money for the family. If you like selling that, some people don't like it. They think it's a gimmick. We incorporate it into our sales process because it does add value. American Amicable has, I think, the Everest product. So it's very nice to sell that on top of things. It kind of, it's the sizzle to the steak. The only thing I don't like about this product is it's a mid-range price product. But again, like I said, while this used to be important to me, it's not. What matters is having a product that can functionally get the job done. And pricing is not a part of that. Extreme pricing is, but most of these products are in line with each other, generally speaking. And AMM's a little bit higher than some of the other products we have, but they do everything else right. So at the end of the day, they're good. So now I want to spend some time talking about the one type of product that we are not, or steadily working to not write anymore. There may come a time in the future where we pull this product entirely, but we have minimized selling this product because of all of the problems that it causes us and the overratedness of this product. Does anybody want to take a guess? And it's not a carrier, it's a type of product. What type of product am I talking about? I want to throw it in the chat. Yeah, wow, everybody knows. Not Medicare. Yeah, it's not a product. It's not like a different product. It's a type of final expense product. So let's see. Zygmunt and Beto, they've been hanging around. They must have heard me say it. And there's guaranteed issue. So what is guaranteed issue? So guaranteed issue is no questions asked life insurance. On the face of it, when you deal with clients in the final expense arena, you're going to be like thrilled because now you can approve literally everybody regardless of health. But the problem is because of how your business model is structured as an agent, it causes a lot of problems for the carrier and for you personally that until you spend about 6 or 12 months into the business, you won't ever realize. And for me, it's taken me, GTL as a carrier is a near guaranteed issue product, but I would argue is similar in the problem here because what you're doing is, as a broker, meaning you represent different carriers, you're sending, in most cases, clients to certain carriers based off of their health. The problem is with GI, guaranteed issue, the only business they get are people who have 9 toes in the grave. They're like dying. They really are. And there's a downside to that. They die faster. And that has all sorts of implications to the process of selling and running an efficient business. So let me go over kind of what we experience with the GI. So number one is poor persistency. So persistency, in case you don't know, is the measure of how long a piece of business stays on the books. Okay. The longer it stays, the longer it pays, right? The less it stays, the less it pays. And what we found out with guaranteed issue is that the one product we sold that was predominantly GI would have a first year persistency 10 to 20 points lower than level coverage, first day full coverage, or even modified or graded, which is kind of like, it's not full coverage, but it's not a 2-year wait like guaranteed issue is. And then the second year persistency was even worse. And so what was happening is that agents would write this business and it was lapsing left and right at a far greater rate than what you would find. And it just doesn't pay very well in order to have it. And that means you spend more time trying to save these deals, get these people back on the book, and for little to no money, because the other issue with GI is it pays less. A true GI product is going to pay you substantially less than other products that are out there. And it has to, because of the type of client that they're accepting, people who are on their way out in life. Okay. And so what we recommend instead now is to sell, instead of GI, sell what we call a modified graded type of business that actually pays good comp. So again, what you'll find with like companies like American Home Life and American Amicable is they've got products, modified or graded, that if you have bad health, you can qualify for them. And they are higher priced, but their persistency is going to be better because they're not people who are like literally dying. It's a little bit better than dying, but it's not so bad that like what you would find in guaranteed issue. And so what we do in the Dig agency now is we're training our agents is if you ever find somebody on the front end that's guaranteed issue, don't write the business. It's not worth it. The commission that they get paid isn't worth the time. We would rather have an agent figure out in 5 minutes or less using our script that they're guaranteed issue, dump the call, and then get back on the phone and find a prospect that will actually qualify for something better and then pay the agent more. I know companies in our business that doesn't even consider writing guaranteed issue. They just skip it up altogether. And that's kind of where we're eventually moving, I think, one day. It's a set of different issues on the agency level, why GI and even a GTL product isn't optimal. But for the working agent, the problem is if it's set up correctly, it's not a very good paying product. And then you're on the hook for a chargeback for a long time. And it's just not worth it. If you're buying your own leads, selling over the phone, buy extra leads is what I would say to do. Disqualify GI immediately, and then get back on the phone and find a level policy. Just spend your time doing that. You'll make more money and keep more of it too. So in short, what are the takeaways from this? Because you may or may not want to use these carriers. That's fine with me. But I want to leave you with some advice on if you're out there trying to figure this out and you want to know what to get, like what matters the most here. So the big thing is you got to work with carriers that get the billing straight. You got to work with carriers that have an easy application process. And you got to work with carriers that have a reasonable price. It doesn't have to be the lowest price, but it has to be reasonable. And that's the least important out of the prior two. To me, at this point in my career, and I've done this in final expense since 2011, the only thing I care about is, can the carrier collect money and beat the client to the ATM so they have Social Security deposit billing? Is the application process 90% of the time or more going to be approved on the spot? There are companies out there that disqualify your apps half the time. There's a company that for the longest time, about half the time you'd submit an application, it would get referred to underwriting, which essentially means it was declined. And it's very hard to pivot and get your client to do something else if you're stuck in that position. So you have to demand that the carriers you work with get a decision to you on that first call, 90% plus of the time or greater. And then the least important of it is pricing. While it's good to have competitive pricing, it pales in comparison if the great competitive pricing has bad application and billing procedures. And then underwriting generally is okay. There's very few companies that have such liberal underwriting that anything goes through that doesn't have huge prices or some sort of 2-year plus waiting period. So there's some trade-off there. But most of these underwriting carriers have similar underwriting for the most part, not always. But that's, again, lesser of my concerns than it used to be. And it's taken me a long time. And I would suggest everybody here working in our company or not, especially those not, like you want to make sure that you think through your carrier selection and make sure what you select bills on time, is easy for you to complete the application, and isn't like too expensive. And don't write guaranteed issue. that's just been a recent wake up call for me for all the issues that come with it. It's better just to pass it up. Okay. All right. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to learn more about the Dig Agency, go to davidduford.com. We've just recently released some new products. We are now in the final expense CRM business. So if you're looking for a CRM specializing in final expense, we offer a program for that that's based off of the Dig Agency CRM. We also have done for you marketing management for agents and agencies that want to generate high quality Facebook final expense leads at wholesale prices. That's our FE Leads Direct program. And last but not least, we do events where we do live virtual trainings that are deep dives into learning final expense and how to sell it in a detailed, advanced way. So make sure you check the links in the bottom below for more about that. And of course, we recruit agents to sell final expense with our free lead model too, and you'll see the link below. Thank you so much for watching.